Well, maybe you could leave one in Sally's office. We could take turns reading the stupid thing. I don't know.
Everyone good? You need your computer, Mary?
Well,
No, you're not, yeah.
Regulation that I'll get the exact.
I don't need my
by
computer
federal
for
regu-
this. Anyway.
It is.
You don't.
No,
Okay.
I don't need it.
You're good?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and call this meeting back to order. After a quick lunch break, we left off at item 15, which is the discussion on the BLM Resource Management Plan. We had a little bit of this morning with Mr. Josh Coursey coming under public comment sections. So this will be, I guess, a little bit of a recap on that, but at this time I'd hand it over to Commissioner Toman.
Well, I'll start with the beginning and the preface to all of our involvement as a local governmental entity on any federal land plan centers around our plan as a county, our federal land and resource use plan, which we took advantage of the governor's federal natural resource policy account to get this, to get legal, to help us work through planning and zoning as our committee to develop this plan. So it's on the website and it's filed with the clerk. And this is the plan when the federal plans come out or projects, whatever, the governor does what is called a consistency review. After the public has their comment period, then our coalition and our representative, our legal, meet with the governor's staff and they talk about the inconsistencies. How is the federal plan or project inconsistent with the county's plan? What do we believe about? It has certain sections that are in every resource management plan. And so our plan addresses each of them and what the county believes as the planning and zoning adopted and as the commission adopted last year. So you have your policy, your ag, air quality, cultural, ditches, canals, irrigation, energy, wildlife or wildfire management, fisheries, floodplains, forestry, irrigation, land access, law enforcement, domestic livestock and grazing, mining and mineral, non-native species and invasive species, predator control, recreation and tourism, riparian and wetland areas, special designations, threatened and endangered species, water quality, water rights, wild horses, wildlife. So those are the topics that are covered in every federal at least a Department of Interior BLM plan. But we also present this plan to the Forest Service. They've all received copies of it, saying that this is what the county believes as far as those topics are concerned. So the next stage, just to set the background, I've personally been involved as a cooperator, starting with the Jackmo Hills. 24 years I've been going to these cooperator meetings, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours. The Rock Springs BLM Resource Management Plan process started 12 years ago. It's been through 3 or 4 iterations. I don't know how many presidential reviews with different presidents, and it still hasn't been final. Now, they've come out with their preferred alternative. The usual process is to get your local governments and the state governments and the game and fish, all of us get in meetings with the BLM technical staff and their resource specialists. We have meetings. I've been involved in the Kimmer Resource Management Plan that cuts into Sweetwater County by Granger. I've been involved with the Lander Resource Management Plan that cuts into South Pass. I've been involved with the Kimmer Resource Management Plan. That was the first one I was involved with. It cuts into, well, that was the Kimmer one that cuts into Granger. We have Lander. Rollins cuts in pretty far to Adobe Town, cuts into Sweetwater County. But Sweetwater County is 8th largest county in the nation. 7 million acres, 70% pretty much public lands of one type or another. So the usual process is you get those people together who are going to be cooperators. They ask you, do you want to be a cooperator on this plan, this project, whatever. And this county and this conservation district have been involved in every possible plan or project in this county. So you get together and you start to analyze, should we keep the current plan, alternative A? Should we leave it as it is? Or you start to look at the extremes. You have to analyze the full range. That means you look at the conservation type of plan, which they have chosen as preferred. Alternative B is a conservation plan, which basically is a lockup, if you ask me, because it's the extreme. The other extreme is the resource use plan, which would be drill, baby, drill, and I do it everywhere, do it all kinds of development. But as a group, you try to come up with alternative D, which would be a balanced alternative, which this whole 12 years, we have advocated for this balance plan. You heard Josh talk about it. Even their group supported the alternative D, which would be the balanced alternative. So the cooperators have not been called to a meeting with the BLM since June of 2022. August 17th, Kimberly Foster, the field manager in Rock Springs, says she wanted to have a cooperator plan before the BLM came out with their proposed plan. Instead, they jumped the gun and they have the announcement made before we even get to the cooperator meeting in Rock Springs on the 17th. The 18th is when it will be officially published. There's a 90-day public comment period. There will be 3 public hearings, and I've brought copies of where those public hearings are. Just if you want to pick it up or go to the BLM website, it's really important that people go and see the maps to see how it's going to affect them and their lives. Under the Federal Land Management Policy Act, FLPMA, they are to manage public lands in a manner that not only protects natural resources, but which recognizes the nation's need for domestic sources of minerals, food, timber, and fiber from the public lands, while providing for outdoor recreation and human occupancy and use, and that it be on the basis of multiple use and sustained yield. The socioeconomic impacts in Chapter 3 must be analyzed and disclosed for each alternative. That study is more than 10 years old right now. So if they say we chose alternative D and it's going to eliminate oil and gas development, they're supposed to tell you what that dollar amount is. That study is over 10 years old. So that is a big problem already to start with. So at our meeting on the 17th, here's what they shared with us. It will be published August 18th, and you have until November 16th to comment. On February of 2011 was their first notice of intent, the scoping. On June of 2022, that was our last cooperator meeting. They gave us no heads up. We and the staff had thought that it would go for the alternative D. We didn't see how they could pick one of the extremes. 3.6 million acres of BLM surface, 3.7 million acres of mineral. They've done 2 environmental assessments for wild horses on March of 2019 and May of 2023. Special designations, there are 10 ACECs, areas of critical environmental concern, which would be identified for sage grouse, lecking area, elk calving area, whatever. That's what we currently have. Wilderness study areas, Congress is the only one that could change those designations to make them a real wilderness or take them off the list totally. And that's never happened. National historic trails, like the Oregon Trail and all those trails that go through, they used to have certain areas that you had to avoid they've extended that to 2 miles now. 2 miles on either side of the trails, making a big swipe through the county. There have been numerous iterations on the sage grouse plans. Right now, they've decided to make it a regional 9-state plan. They would have monthly cooperator meetings. And the last meeting they had, they sent us a notice and then didn't bother to tell us they'd canceled the meeting, and they're not going to have any more cooperator meetings. And the biggest implication with the sage grouse plan, whenever that plan comes out, then it will be superseding anything that's in this plan. How you could get any more restrictive, I don't know, but it will come out as additional whatever. they decide for the sage grouse. BLM pointed out there's been no change in the data or the alternative analysis as far as how many acres, and the information stayed the same. It's just they switched from the balanced alternative D to the very conservative alternative B, the conservation one. So it went from 10 ACECs, those areas of critical environmental concern, 286,000 acres, which is the current. They're proposing a preferred that would take 16 ACECs of 1.6 million acres. And basically what it's going to do is going to take in everything along the Wind River front, Jack Morrow Hills, and everything that was decided in that plan. Now this plan will take precedence. There was supposed to be a recreation management area along South Pass area. That's off the table. It will be a much more conservative. The big thing is your access is going to be limited. They're proposing to eliminate 10,000 miles of roads. That's going to be every 2-track in the county, as well as, I believe it's 4,000 other roads on BLM. So basically, they're not doing much with the checkerboard, but they have really limited, and the other area of ACECs, Little Mountain, Pine Mountain, everything going down to the Utah-Colorado border. So you've got these areas of critical environmental concern, the checkerboard going through the middle of the county. The biggest contradiction, which is going to be interesting, how are they going to resolve this one? They've also proposed maps, which we haven't seen, of this green energy. They're going to spiderweb these corridors that have to connect all of the wind farms and the solar farms. But the new plan says there will be no right-of-ways or corridors. So BLM was even kind of interested in that one. How are they going to resolve their own? And those are the wind farms and the solar farms are considered right-of-ways. So, but it also will hamper our neutrona projects because some of those are going to be on right-of-ways. They're going to need right-of-ways for the water lines and things. So it's going to limit and restrict a lot of things going forward. As cooperators, we have legal jurisdiction by law with special expertise. So it is our job as a commission to harness our powers, to get the word out to the public, get people to come to those public meetings. And they've only proposed 3 of them. So first thing I think we need to really push for is to get another meeting in the county. They have one in Lyman at the library, Tuesday, September 19th, 3 to 4 p.m., 1 hour for you to go in there and look at the maps and learn whatever you need to learn about what's special for you. Tuesday, September 26th, 3 to 6 p.m. As Island pointed out, most of us are going to our state convention that week. It will be at the Big Putty Marbleton Town Hall, 3 to 6 p.m. on September 26th, outside the county. The only one proposed for the county is September 27th, Wednesday, 3 to 4 p.m., 1 hour at the Rock Springs BLM field office. We should show up with about 500 people and, you know, ask them questions, ask the hard questions. How is it going to affect your access to hunting? How is it going to affect your access to camping? Access is going to be hugely limited. That is the major problem with this plan. And also it is going to limit our economic base for this county, seriously. So we formed a coalition about 20 years ago, and we have other counties, 6 conservation districts and 3 counties. We meet once a month with a lawyer and legal and technical team. Comments are being prepared on behalf of this county for that RMP. So the mid-October, our official comments will come out for us to review, and we will share them with the public as far as all of those relationships to our plan of how they're consistent, they're not consistent, how it's going to affect our economy, custom and culture, and all of those things. So I don't personally have a strong statement to state right now, except that they should have chosen alternative D as far as I can tell. I asked Eric to print off a copy of the 1,300-page plan. Do you want to show him what that is? Focus your efforts on alternative B to see what it's going to do to you and look at the maps. That's the most important place to go if you don't have time to read all 1,300 pages. Good job. Great. Someone in the audience has printed out the maps. They're scary because, for example, coal, they're saying, I don't know what percentage, like 86% of the county could have coal development in. They've cut it down to like, I don't know the exact number, 3% or something of the county can have coal on it. So they think they're going to determine our future just by limiting everything. So I don't know. So the government has a role. He stepped out and made a statement. I was really proud of him for doing that, because what he said is it's right on. It's gonna totally affect our accounting. The other BLM resource management plans, as I mentioned, Rollins, Lander, Pinedale, Kimmer, all have been developed with the support and participation of this cooperators, the local governments, and trying to make those plans consistent. Then you come with a plan that's totally different from all of the surrounding plans that the BLM has. They're not opposed to putting layer on top of layer. It's really hard for the BLM to manage. If you come in and you put a sage-grouse layer, it says you can't do this because of sage-grouse, then you put another layer over top of it, and you can't do this because of elk, and you can't do this because of something else. We've avoided that in all of those other resource plans. And this one, they're not worried about it at all. If they have 6 layers on top of each other, you figure it out. It's a management nightmare. I don't know how they think they can do it. Kat Urbichite on Cowboy State Daily did a pretty good summary of some of the high points. The governors, including our governor, this is all part of Biden's agenda to, you know, the 30 by 30 rule, get all this land into conservation, basically. That public land rule is also another blast on us. And I don't know which one's going to supersede which one. This one isn't going to go through the NEPA process. At least the federal plan they're working with now is tied to the NEPA process, even though they're trying to sidestep it and ignore 12 years of local input. So that's my hurrah.
Very passionate hurrah, I might add, Commissioner
Well,
Tillman.
if you devoted 24 years of your life to go into 5,000 hours of at least probably, I can't even tell you how many hours I've spent in those cooperator meetings.
No, that wasn't a dig at you. I appreciate all your work into this, and obviously you've followed it closely and have better understanding than most of us sitting up here. So I think, you know, the point is this has been kind of rolled out what feels like in a quick fashion, even though it's been in the works for the last 12 to 15 years, as we heard this morning. So it seems a little bit odd to have a quick 90-day comment period turnaround with obviously a large scale, 1,300 page rollout of this plan. But I think most importantly, we don't want to rush to a decision, but we also want to defend and do what's right for Sweetwater County. And we will fight for that. And I think the purpose of Commissioner Tillman wanting to discuss this today on the agenda was to kind of get that ball rolling. Let the community know that it is on our forefront, and we will take it seriously to do what's best. As we mentioned this morning, we are a big multi-use county, a big multi-use state. We support the extraction industry. It's our bread and butter here in Sweetwater County. And so, we will continue to fight with that. And it sounds as though the alternative D was kind of a mix of everything that we represent in this county with, open road access and, wildlife and certainly the extraction industry. So we're scratching the surface. We're probably not going to have an answer today as far as where we're at. I think in conversations this morning, it seems like there's some similarities from this governing body, but it sounds like for years that's been the case with various, entities with the sportsman's support, both municipalities, and certainly from those that are involved with the coalition of local governments. So, and speaking with Commissioner Tillman, I know they're taking a stance on that, and we'll continue to prepare that, which sounds like will be out in October. We will continue to analyze this and study it to find, where we all stand on the matter, so that we can fight for that. And we will show up for the meeting on September 27th And if 90 days isn't enough, we will fight for an extension. But I think at this point in time, we're trying to gather all the information and dissect it so that we fully understand it and can represent what's best. So that would be my 2 cents. And
Well, the best part is, if I could say one more thing.
Sure.
We have been tied to this process from day one by forming the coalition with Joe Oldfield and the Conservation District. We formed a coalition of other counties and conservation districts so that we could have a legal and technical team that throughout this process, we have been writing legally defensible, scientifically credible, because we've hired technical consultants to do studies on sage grouse. And we have that legal team. Danielle Betancourt works for the coalition and all of us. And she has been in this position for 12 years. She knows and has the history and has the ongoing comments that have been submitted. So it's not like we're hitting it totally cold, but we've asked her to work on the comments to get them to us. So we have plenty of time as a commission to review them, to take them public so you can see what we're commenting on and presenting it to the BLM. And then the governor gets it after that 90-day period. And Danielle will work with the governor's staff. She's already working with them to see where they're consistent with what the state and the county has as their plans. So that's where we're at. The only way you stop them though is we have to sue them, you know. We've sued them as a coalition. We sued the Rollins plan on air quality and VRM's visual resource management distances. So anytime these plans have come up, it's on the record. And if you aren't on the record at the administrative record, you have no right to challenge. If you decide to do a project and nobody has challenged what's in that plan, well, good luck. You don't have standing, basically. So I don't know. That's all I have to say unless anyone has questions.
any other comments, commissioners?
I tried not to use any acronyms. I didn't want to freak him out over there.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards?
I just want to thank Mary for the work she puts on this. I know I give her a lot of grief about federal meetings, but it's really important that we're involved, and Sweetwater County should recognize the resource they have in Commissioner Toman and being on top of this and the work that Eric puts into it. This is a scary plan. This, as I said in my commissioner comments earlier, this has the possibility of destroying our county's economy, and we're going to have to fight it every step of the way and fight for an amended option D that doesn't interfere with our growth in Sweetwater County.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Jones?
just a couple other points that go along with it. I agree. Thank you, Mary, for what you're doing, what you have done for so many years. And this is kind of maybe more for people who might show up to the meeting, and please do. I don't think we can possibly stress that enough, but you also need to say something. I don't know how many of these meetings we've been to, and there's a whole room full of people and 2 people say something, and that doesn't get the job done. So people have to speak up, but they also need to look with a critical eye at what they're saying in each of the plans. For example, Mary mentioned the 10,000 miles of trails that would be lost. The reality is, one of the sneak plays that they pull is they will use a substantially older map than what is available today. And so they will say there's only 10,000 miles of trails or roads that will lose access. But the reality is you may have been camping in a spot for the last 10 years, but that road isn't on their map, but it's still going to be lost. So you have to be real critical of the maps that they use and how accurate they are with current use. And it's not just what was used 10, 12, 15, or sometimes more years ago. The other thing I would say is for as far as the outdoor recreation goes, another one they will try and pull is they will say that they are going to leave certain areas open to multiple use. By that, they will selectively pick 1, 2 user groups, and then they will say it's multiple use. Well, technically, yes, 2 is more than 1, but it's not true multiple use. So you really have to look with a critical eye at what they're saying, or they'll pull a fast one.
Commissioner
Mr.
Slaughter?
Chairman, just two quick things. I think it's been stated very well. And we all realize what a dramatic impact this can have. I think there are 2 points that we really need to address. First, I like Commissioner Tolman's idea of trying to talk to the BLM about potentially having an additional meeting. I think if we could potentially try and have a meeting in Green River, I think it would be worth talking to them to see if they would look at potentially scheduling a meeting for that. I would like to see that. And then I also think, in addition to having the attorney who works for us through the CLG, I think it's important that we try and work directly with the governor's office with this. This is something that's extremely important to Sweetwater County. And we've seen what the governor has done. He came out immediately upon this plan, coming out with a very negative statement about how it was going to impact the state of Wyoming. Obviously, it's going to affect us the most. And I think we need to jump on board with that with the governor's office and ally ourselves in that manner to try and effectively fight this.
Keaton,
Commissioner Tillman?
if I could just respond to the travel. We spend hours in travel management plans, and I don't know, Gene might have even been involved, I'm not sure. As a conservation district, we came to the commission. The commission has supported the conservation district being involved heavily, and Wally Johnson was always in those cooperator meetings also. But we asked for funding to develop a comprehensive mapping system, which we have access to, which shows all the different layers from what Kip Felderman developed for us. It shows all the roads. And what he found when he was starting to work those travel management plans in the areas where we were identifying roads and fighting with the BLM or asking them to keep roads, and it's okay to avoid a duplicate road or whatever. We spent hours in meetings doing different zone areas of the county. So one of the great interesting things was he found a BLM website map that showed every little trickle trail in the county. And we have that in our database. It's been erased off of the BLM website, but we know where every 2-track trail and everything is because we got that map before they eliminated it. So that's what we use when we made our comments. We've, through the coalition, made comments through the years on those travel routes. So it's all on file. It's all in the administrative record. All of our meetings, all of that stuff it's an accumulation. It's not just a one-time thing that we're facing right now. We're lucky that we have that history behind us, that research behind us, so we can just continue with the comments and have some credible comments because we've done the work.
Any other discussion on this management plan? Eric, did you have anything you wanted to add?
You want to read us that 1,300 page?
I do. Story time. Mr. Chairman, so if you're okay with it and the commissioners, we have, as Commissioner Tolman stated, that 2022 federal land use plan that we have here in Sweetwater County. And I can coordinate with Danielle Betancourt. That's typically what I do to make sure that our comments as far as the land use department and our regulations are included in her letter. Because that's what we've been doing with other projects. And if you're okay with that, Mr. Chairman, I can proceed that way.
I believe we're on board with that.
Okay. And the other thing is, I believe Commissioner Richards had mentioned it this morning, Commissioner Tolman also, the right-of-way map is very concerning that they have on there. And the issues of land lock of properties, because there are private property owners within that. Are some of our large property owners. So keep in mind that that's another fight, and that's going to be a part of this because that map was not included in some of the cooperator meetings because I don't see any comments on those on that right of way map. So just something to keep in mind as we move forward. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. We'll be working hand in hand with you as we sort through this one.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate Commissioner Slaughter for really trying to get more heavily involved by attending the coalition meetings and for all of you wanting to learn more about it, even though you don't like the acronyms, which After 24 years, I'd pass out if I still had to write the comments myself.
All right, well, appreciate the discussion. Thanks for getting that on the agenda, Commissioner Toman. We will continue to study this and sort through the difficulty with what may come about if we don't stand up and fight. So any other discussion on the matter? All right, we will go ahead and move along. We are behind schedule, so I apologize to Castle Rock for that very important topic that we didn't want to short by any means. But next is item 16, which is the ambulance quarterly update. We've got the Castle Rock Hospital District CEO Bailey Doctor, CFO Todd Toolson in attendance today. And it doesn't look like Dan's here, but good afternoon. Thanks for being patient with us.
Afternoon. Thank you for having us. This is our quarterly update for the ambulance service, just to let you know how things are going since we combined with Rock Springs Sweetwater Medics Ambulance Service back in November. So this is reporting on 3 quarters. We were going to come to you in August, but I apologize. I missed the deadline. It changed from a Wednesday to a Monday, and I submitted my application for this meeting too late. So this is a little bit dated, but this is the report through July of 2023. So just to let you know, we are still staffing 3 full-time ambulances, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are 2 staffed in Rock Springs and 1 is in Green River. And the data with the amount of calls that we're seeing, both 911 and our transports from Memorial Hospital out to various other states, we're seeing that 3 ambulances is definitely still enough ambulances for our county. We are not close to needing a 4th ambulance at this time. Our response times are still 90% of our calls are less than 6 minutes. And on average, we're seeing about 200, a little over 200 911 calls per month. We're transporting about 30, a little less than 30 patients per month to Utah, Colorado, out of state. And then we're taking about 15 patients per month from the hospital out to the airport so that they can be flown down to Utah. Of the $1.8 million subsidy that we're contracted with the county, we did spend all of the $1.8 million last fiscal year, plus another $41,000 of Castle Rock's own money on the ambulance service. But in our contract, we did agree that if there was, additional money after the $1.8 million, that Castle Rock would take on that risk. And we did. It's a small amount, $41,000. And we do believe that we'll get more efficient over time. So we are comfortable continuing to provide the service. The cost to the county, just as a reminder, prior to us taking over in November, with the combination of the subsidy that Castle Rock and Sweetwater Medics had asked the previous commission for, it was going to be $2.2 million. So the $1.8 million, even though it is a lot of money, it is still a savings to the county. The largest driver behind that, of course, our largest cost is our staff, but we also wrote off about $750,000 to doubtful accounts. So we have a large proportion of the patients that we're picking up for 911 are underinsured or uninsured patients. And I'm going to have Todd Toolson, our CFO, address the specific payer mix with you all. But it is a little bit more unfavorable even than we had anticipated. And historically, Castle Rock operated the ambulance service just in Green River, and we didn't have the transports to the hospital. So big picture wise, it was difficult for us to be able to determine what the overall payer mix is in Sweetwater County. And now that we've been doing it for, a little over 9 months, we are getting a lot better at being able to tell what those payers are going to give us, how much we have to write off. And this last fiscal year is about $750,000, which is a lot of money. But as you know, on ambulance service, we don't deny anyone care. We respond to every call, regardless of the patient's ability to pay, whether that be a 911 or a long distance transport. The good news is that we are fully staffed. We have about 45 employees, of which 28 to 29 of them are active full-time equivalents. So we are fully staffed for the 3 ambulances, and our turnover is very low. It's about 2%. And in healthcare, really across a lot of industries, less than 10% is good. So we were happy with the 2% that we've experienced. after we merged with Sweetwater Medics, we added a lot of employees because Sweetwater Medics employed a lot of people. And since then, we've added another 23% to the overall amount of staff working in EMS. So we do have more people working in EMS in Sweetwater County now than we really ever have. And I can say that confidently that we have added a lot of people. We have 5 employees also that have gained in their skills. They took an advanced class. And so they're waiting to take their practical exam, but all of them passed their class and they passed their clinical. So we're excited for them to be able to take on more of an advanced role in the service. Some of the other things that we've added since taking over, we have developed a quality assurance program and are really working on improving our training program for our staff. And that's in conjunction with our medical director that's employed through Memorial Hospital of Sweetwater County. He's the medical director for us and for all the fire services in the community. And then just to update you also, since the last meeting, we have been able to successfully implement a mutual aid agreement with Daggett County. I believe we're still waiting on a couple of things for them to be able to finish, but as far as we're concerned, as long as the state works, as long as they work out with the state what they need to with their licensure, we feel confident that the 2 dispatches can work together for patients in McKinnon and Manila to be able to be responded to quickly, and we'll continue to work closely with them. And then finally, just to let you know that, billing and management are 2 of the biggest challenges that we have in EMS. And we believe that the longer we work at this, the better picture we're going to have on, just the types of patients that we see in the community, as well as how well their insurances can pay. So as far as our contract with the county goes, we realize that it's a financial contract and you're the people that are paying for it. So we appreciate that. And if you ever have any questions, you can certainly let us know. But I wanted to give Todd also an opportunity to speak specifically to kind of what those big write-offs are and what we're seeing. So should I let him go and then open it up for questions, or?
That's fine.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Hi, Todd.
Hey, commissioners. I just want to clarify on the financials. So last year we received almost 1.2 million in subsidy because the contract started later in the year. We didn't receive the full 1.8. This fiscal year that we're in right now, we are slated to receive the full 1.8 million. And when we talk about spending, we're actually talking about net loss. So our net loss for the year was 1.235 million. So that was about 41,000 in excess of the subsidy. So that's prior to that almost $1.2 million subsidy. Then the biggest surprise for us, the biggest negative surprise has just been the payer mix. Once we brought Rock Springs and additional interstate and highways into the mix. So our payer mix right now for ambulance is just totally different from our medical center. Medicare is 45%, which makes sense. Those are folks that are older and more likely to use the ambulance services. Medicaid, 10%. Other third-party payers, so this is commercial insurance, the biggest of which is Blue Cross Blue Shield, is 41%. Find that again. Sorry, no, 27%. And then self-pay is 19%. So self-pay is those that don't have any insurance at all. And compare that to the medical center, for instance, where our self-pay is at 2% for the medical center, because that's mostly residents of the city of Green River. And the payer mix is worse in Rock Springs, but the worst is when we're picking up those on the interstate. You'd be surprised how many people don't have automobile insurance and just that are from out of state or have an out of state Medicaid. So of those amounts, we expect to write off through contract adjustments, contracts that we have through Medicare, Medicaid, and through these various third-party insurances. We expect to write off 68% of our Medicare, 75% of our Medicaid. Medicaid's our worst payer. 42% of our third-party payers, and then of our self-pay, we expect to write off 86%. And that's just because these are big bills. We charge, on average, our gross charge is about $2,500 for an ambulance. And then if we're transporting somebody to a hospital in Utah, for example, you're looking at closer to $6,000. So these are expensive bills. The gross revenue is big, but then we have big contract adjustments and bad debt. to give us our net revenue. And then after that, our biggest expense by far is staffing. So this is wages and benefits. Overtime's a challenge for us right now. And then after that, it's our capital equipment. And so also when we say spend, we're not actually talking about how much money we spend. We're not doing cash accounting. We're doing accrual accounting, just like the county, just like any large organization. This year, we spend well in excess of, we've probably spent close above $2 million in cash outlay just on capital equipment and wages and benefits. But when we purchase an ambulance, we depreciate it over the life of the ambulance, the useful life of the ambulance. So we're not charging the county all of that up front. We're charging it out over the life of the ambulance. But yeah, so we started out the year well, though. We're almost 2 months into the year. We started out good in terms of our gross revenue. Wages and benefits are partially offsetting the favorable gross revenue. But we're starting out strong, and yeah, we know what our challenges are, and yeah, I think it's from a financial standpoint, it's been worse than expected. I didn't expect that we'd use up the full $1.2 million subsidy last year. I didn't think there was any way, but the biggest piece of that was just the payer mix was worse than we expected, and so for accounting, you know, a lot of you understand this. I do an estimate allowance for the contract adjustments and for doubtful accounts. And that was a big hit at the end of the year that I needed to do for accounting purposes in terms of estimating how much that we have on our books we're not going to be able to collect. And it was a big chunk. But now that that's trued up, I think that's we're not going to have any big surprises like that. And again, I don't expect to use the full 1.8 subsidy this year. I'd be very surprised.
Thanks, Todd. So just point of clarification. So it was 1.2. So you're about what did you say? 235 over, which is
Yeah. The subsidy was 1,195,000.
Okay.
And our net loss was 1.235. So 1,235,000.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Tillman.
I have a question. What happened to 250,000 regionalization grant you got from the state? Because I understood that was going to come off of our tab.
Well,
We're going to reduce our amount.
right, it would. So that goes into our bottom line. That helped our revenue, but it also increased our expenses by the same amount because it went straight to the employees of the ambulance service in terms of bonuses.
Are you talking about the realization?
Yeah, right.
Sure.
So the regionalization grant is a lot. It's a lot of money. It's $2.5 million that was awarded to the county. We've had to amend our budget because the state budget committee has come back several times since they awarded it. And I think we're on our fourth amendment now at this point. So although it was approved in January, they still have not funded the grant because there's these little tweaks that keep coming back from the budget committee. That I think the first one is that we couldn't use it for any more than 4 staff when originally we had, 20 staff in there. So then we had to change it. And then they amended it again, not to include anything like training. So we had to take some of our training out. So we've just been back and forth. But the good news is once the clock starts and when they start paying it, initially we had asked for, I think it was 4.3 million. And we were awarded 2.5 million. So we can still get the entire 2.5 million. It's just taking a little longer to get that clock started, if that makes sense.
Oh, we won't have to pay for the next 2 years. We're looking good, guys.
Hopefully not.
Don't forget to include that now.
Yes, ma'am.
We wouldn't forget.
Any other questions or comments on the quarterly update, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Jones.
I have a couple questions. So you're at 45 employees.
Mhm.
How many total employees before the consolidation were in Sweetwater County?
What's 23% less than 45? Probably, I would say close to maybe 33. And remember, some of those are of the 45. We probably have 10 that are PRN, just more volunteer. And then 6 or 7 that are true part-time that can give us between 5 and 20 hours a week. And then another 24 that are full-time, at least 40 hours a week. So I know Sweetwater Medics and Castle Rock both before the merge had lost employees. It was not an attractive career to go into because there was a lot of volatility around EMS and still is, but I think it's gotten better now that people see that we have at least a long-term solution for the next several years. So we are starting to attract some more people. And it's not just people from out of the area. A lot of employees, the ratio of out of area employees prior to the merge was quite large. But now we've got some more local people that are going into it. So we are happy about that. So.
And you may have already discussed all this stuff before my time, so I apologize if I'm making you
No, that's
answer
fine.
questions twice. How many new ambulances and trucks were purchased?
I believe, I don't have that at the top of my head, so I might misspeak, but we remounted 2 ambulances. So that's putting on the new truck and keeping the actual ambulance piece that was in good shape. And then we purchased a transport van and then 2 other new ambulances. So 2 remounts, 2 new ambulances, plus a transport ambulance. So in reality, it's like 5 new ambulances. And then we're doing 1 more remount this year. So that'll bring it to 6.
And we did replace all of Sweetwater Medics. We had purchased those and used them for a little while. But we have replaced all of them now at this point.
Do you still have the county funded one?
No. No, that one was funded off of a grant and it had like 200 and don't quote me on it, but over 200,000 miles. It was time to replace it.
And then didn't you guys work with medics for a while before taking over the whole thing? Before it was a consolidated?
We have always historically done standbys for each other. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean to make sure that the conversion went smooth and that everybody was kind of informed and you knew what they
Sure.
were doing. They knew what you were doing. So it was kind of
That
as
was.
seamless as possible.
Yes, last fall, we did interviews in conjunction with, we worked with Ron Gaddy, the previous owner, to set up interviews and, he recommended his staff to us. And so everybody knew, going into it that they were interviewing for a new position, but also, that we were excited to bring them on. One other thing that the district did was grandfather in Sweetwater Medics employees so that they could continue to accrue PTO. So that was a seamless process. Typically, our new employees have to go through a waiting period before they can start accruing PTO. So we felt like it would be fair to allow them to continue to do that.
I guess what I was getting at was more along the lines of the business of it, not necessarily
I
the
see.
people, but the
So as far as the response times.
responses and, the payer mix, all the business end of things.
Yeah, we had a purchase agreement with Sweetwater Medics where we, bought out their ambulances and made sure that, we had enough ambulances in Rock Springs to be able to respond appropriately. And the transport piece came to Castle Rock a little earlier than the transition. We started doing transports in June. We took over 100% of the transports where prior to that medics had them. So that helped. I think we had to staff up a little bit to be able to accommodate all of those because before we weren't doing them. So yeah, I mean, I feel like, there were typical probably bumps along the way. We didn't get all of Sweetwater Medics employees to apply for us. So, there's those kinds of struggles, but by and large, we moved into their locations. So that was nice because everybody knew where their inventory was and knew, kind of how the ambulances were set up. So I felt like we worked with medics really well through that process. And that is one thing we are still operating out of Sweetwater Medics building. And I had wanted to bring that up today. We do have the potential to move out of Sweetwater Medics building. The lease itself is a little cost prohibitive for us. We'd like to kind of be out of that more residential location. And so one thing we had discussed was potentially moving over to build a building on Memorial Hospital, but that's up to the commissioners. There is vacant land available next to their emergency room that we would potentially still be interested in, but we have kind of started looking at other locations as a possibility as well. So we didn't know if you had any thoughts on whether or not you'd be amenable to that, but
And I guess my question or my thoughts are more along the lines of, just seemed odd to me that the payer mix would catch you off guard. I would think that's something that would have been discussed with. Matt,
Yeah,
so you'd have those
we
financials.
never had reliable numbers from Sweetwater Medics. They didn't have reliable financial statements. Air mix isn't reported on financial statements, but even then we didn't have those numbers. They didn't have them readily available. We just saw there was a prior ambulance board that saw, what the revenue was, how much they actually collected each month. And it was grotesque. I mean, the numbers we saw were really, really terrible. And we thought there's no way those can even be right. I mean, and they haven't been anywhere close to that bad, but we thought it would be closer to Green River payer mix than what it turned out to be. But yeah, it really went from, was it November 20th that we took over? November 19th, they were running it. November 20th, we were running it. So there was never a time when we were simultaneously running it and sitting there together as management, figuring it out. It was, it was kind of a clean break, and all of their accounts receivable, they kept, so they're able to collect on that. And then we started day one billing, and whatever we billed, we would collect on.
And then in a bunch of the meetings that I sat through, it was always the one-stop shopping, if you will, was supposed to be the least expensive way to go. I don't know that we're there yet.
Bailey could address this, but it definitely is. I think, did you touch base that the county subsidy was going to be 2.2 million once you looked at what was being given to both medics and Castle Rock. The total, I don't know what medics ended up receiving last year, but we know this next year is going to be 1.8. So we are at 1.2. I don't know what the total medics received last year, but there's definitely a decrease in what the county is contributing. And we definitely have big efficiencies in terms of we have shared overhead now. So we don't have management over two entities. We just have management over one. We have, payroll and accounts payable and maintenance and housekeeping and billing just over one entity. So these are obvious efficiencies. And I think we are seeing it. At the same time, our costs are increasing. We gave a year ago, we gave around 22% increases to our employees in terms of wages, because we're at 2% now for turnover, but back then I don't know the exact figure, but it felt like it was 50%. And we were just going through people all the time. We're always short-staffed. And number one was the instability. They weren't stable. They didn't know if ambulance was going to continue. Nobody knew who was going to run ambulance. And that was hard on them and their families, not knowing if they were going to have a job tomorrow. But then two, the wages were low not compared to national averages, but compared to surveys that we've done, across the state of Wyoming. And then just in terms of our community too, we have a community that lives on high wages with the mining and the oil and gas, and with fire too, that's really well paid, and we compete with them for employees. So these were wage increases that were necessary. And so inflation, of course, is taking a toll on us, just like it has on everybody else. Our medical supplies and the cost of these new ambulances, and they've been in short supply, and we don't have a lot of leverage in terms of what we're going to pay for those. We're paying the market price on these new ambulances. But in terms of efficiencies, I think we're finding them. And I think next year, I don't think we're going to hit the 1.8 million. And I think that's primarily just because we have a good feel now for where contract adjustments are going to be, where bad debt is going to be. And those are built into our financials now. They're built in as an allowance for doubtful accounts. So we're not going to see a surprise at the end of each quarter now for that. And then wages are there. We just know a lot more than we knew, when we started.
Two more and I'll quit. looking at the 12 months ending June 30th. What's the equipment rental and leases went from budget of 8,400 to 124,000?
That was, that's primarily rents. And that was just a budget miss on my part, not budgeting for the rent for the Sweetwater Medics building. And then we allocate rent also for the Green River ambulance building, which is less than what we're paying in Rock Springs, but it's the allocation of both of those rents.
Thank you. And then what's overhead adjustments? That's kind of broad.
Yeah, that's
for,
really broad. It's a huge,
it's a large
huge
amount of
number.
money,
Yeah.
So
So overhead adjustments are all the support departments that I've mentioned some of them. Administration, except for my salary and Bailey's salary are not in there. They're not charged to the ambulance in any way, despite a large portion of our time spent on ambulance. Those we've excluded from that. And that was sort of a handshake agreement we had. I think that was with the prior commission, wasn't it? But other than that, it's all the other administration costs. It's finance. So we're talking payroll and accounts payable. It's purchasing, housekeeping, maintenance. Yeah, billing, which is a huge one. And we've contracted out the coding portion of the billing, and they're doing a really good job for us. But yeah, it's all those areas that are supporting the ambulance service. And that helps us because it takes off some of our overhead, because these are positions that we would have people doing for the most part, whether we had the ambulance service or not. And that's how it helps us, Castle Rock financially, is it covers some of our overhead.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions on the report, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards?
I guess I don't have 2023's budget here in front of me. You referred that it was 2.2 million in subsidies that we paid. Is that?
It was, so prior to this commission, the Sweetwater Medics would request one subsidy and Castle Rock would request the same per call. So per 911 call subsidy that Sweetwater Medics, and the projection after last year. So midway through when we took over going into 2023, if we had kept them separate, the cost was going to be 2.2 million if Sweetwater Medics had stayed separate from Castle Rock.
I just want to put for the record, in 2022, the total was 1.166 million.
And the budget amendments that came after that were, I think it was like, I want to say every 6 months, but it may have been more often than that Sweetwater Medics had come in to ask for increases. So the annual budget was amended.
We got 2 hits from Sweetwater Medics, $250,000 in December and another $250,000 the following, I think, April.
So running an ambulance service, like how fixed are your costs? I mean, you know exactly how many employees you have. You know what your ambulances cost, you know what your rent costs. When you write off 60% of your billing, is that actually writing off your expenses? Because the ambulance is there regardless of whether it's going on a call. You've already accrued the expense, right?
Yeah, you're right. Our expenses are, you could label them as primarily fixed. The unknown, the thing that jumps around the most is our revenue. And so now that we're getting a handle on what our net revenue is, so when we say write off, we're just adjusting the gross revenue to net revenue. So it doesn't have anything to do with our expenses. Our bad debt and contract adjustments really just take down our gross revenue from, I mean, we're writing off more than 50% of our gross revenue. So if we're billing out 5 million, we're writing off 2.5 million. That leaves 2.5 million to cover our expenses. Then after expenses, we end up with this big loss that hopefully this year's less than 1.8 million, so that next year we can reduce the subsidy requested from the county. Did that answer your question?
I think so.
Any other comments, questions? I think there's been some growing pains throughout the year, certainly, as you guys have alluded to, and we've stepped in at a time of the contract being signed and approved. And I think there's been some confusion on whose role is what with some of this, and we've received, we get calls and complaints just like you do, and we've tried to address those head on. I know, I believe it was our last meeting, we had discussion about it's not really the county's role to operate the ambulance service, and our relationship is heavily financial, obviously. But you guys have a board, and the board is tasked with providing that service. And so we've been trying to push in the realm of some of these complaints, or, of course, that's all we hear. We don't ever hear the good that comes from the service, but it should be addressed with your organization and not necessarily us as the sounding board. And I think it's put us in a little bit of a difficult situation, while we certainly care and want to ensure that the county residents are, having a reliable service, and that financial contribution coming from us is being, I guess, sought out appropriately. In terms of the contract, that's kind of your guys' baby and your board to address some of the day-to-day operation. And I don't think it's our job to micromanage that, as long as the service is being provided. So I know I've had several conversations with Bailey in that realm, and we will continue to keep an eye on it, but certainly not try and step in and tell you how you should be operating it. We appreciate the numbers coming forward. That helps kind of paint the picture for us on the financial phase of that all. To answer your question in regards to, the ambulance commissioner, the ambulance barn, Commissioner Slaughter and I met with Bailey, Dan Stanton, and Irene a few months back, and kind of went over the plans for building a facility at the hospital and what that might look like, and walked the area and all of that. We as a board haven't really had any discussion on that since. Bailey did reach out to me a week or so ago, wanting to know if we had any feelings about that. And as she just explained, they were going to start exploring other options. So I think they would like a little bit of direction in that regard. I wasn't too sold on it when we met with them, just because of kind of some of this uncertainty, and you guys transitioning with the takeover and where costs going to, end up. And it's obviously a large expense on our part, and not knowing what does that mean. Obviously it's county property, but then it's, managed by Castle Rock, or is it managed by the hospital? I'm sure some of that can be worked out, but I don't know that I'm there yet. So I told her that we could have that discussion today, and I'm not sure if you all have any feedback or thoughts on that, or if you want to dissect it a little further and give it some time. But
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Tom.
well, of all the vacant buildings in Rock Springs or Sweetwater County, is there anything that's workable maybe?
We had looked a little bit before the prospect of Memorial Hospital came up. I'm sure we could find something.
Because the new building is going to be a lengthy process and very costly.
True. The benefits that we saw, and it, in hindsight, looking at Memorial, it probably, there's a lot of flexibility. We don't necessarily have to be there. The reason that it was attractive was because of the proximity to the hospital, also to the interstate, and centrally located in Rock Springs. But I'm sure we can find something else, and yeah, I'm sure it would be quicker too. So we have engaged a realtor to help us look at this point, but we haven't gone and looked at any other properties. That was just in the last week. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Jones.
I can probably add some, but can't speak for the hospital board anymore. But I know there haven't been any other discussions since you all met with Irene, so there's no decision or thought or anything at this point coming out of the hospital, because there have been no discussions. So it's kind of at a standstill. And we did, I say we, then it was we, have discussions about this as a board briefly, although we had very little information. So the conversations were just as brief as the information that we had. So there's not a feeling one way or the other as to yes or no, just, same thing you just said. How does it look? Who pays for what? Who's responsible for what? And I think obviously it's up to the commission, but the board of trustees should definitely be involved. So just need to probably pick a direction and start informing people which direction we want.
Any other thoughts, feedback?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
it's a difficult thing because without some kind of proposal, how do we even know the feasibility of doing this? A 5,500 square foot facility, we don't even have a starting point on what that would cost us. So how do we even give direction when we have absolutely no idea what the realistic costs would be?
I don't remember. Did you guys have cost estimates figured in with that?
Yeah, we did, based off of the square footage, it was going to be 1.1 million plus architecture fees.
And was,
Which is, when we did our allocation for the total subsidy, we did build in the cost of a building. It was how much a year, do you think? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, it really depends to how we would structure that with the board and with the county, whether the county would pay for that upfront or whether we pay for it and then depreciate over the life of the building and charge that back to the county in that way. We'd financially prefer for the county to pay for it, because then the county's taking on the risk of the building in case after 5 years, the county cuts off the contract with us, then we're stuck with a building that we can't use. And then we'd have to, write off whatever's left to be depreciated as a loss on disposal of a building, or figure out how to sell it, but I guess sell it to the next ambulance service. So there's always that uncertainty in there. But yeah, I did build in a little bit just based off of, 20 to 30 year life of the building. So 1.1 million divided by 30 years. That amount is what's built into the contract right now in terms of depreciation annually. Of
So
course, we
can
don't charge it till it happens.
Oh, good. Can you use the, can you use the regionalization grant to build a facility?
That was in the original application when we submitted, but they came back and said that we could not use it for a building. We would have to use it for the cost of vehicles and maintenance of those vehicles and 4.5 staff. But that was after we found out. And I do, if I could, just bring to attention that the reason that we proposed the option of Memorial Hospital was not because Castle Rock was going to get anything out of that. To me anyway, it seems like that building could be passed on then to the future owners of or operators of an ambulance service. The entire time that we've tried to operate the ambulance and combine them, we really, Castle Rock, besides the stability in the community as far as ambulance goes and, getting away from the uncertainty of whether we would have EMS, our main goal has been to stabilize ambulance service in the community, and having a building at Memorial Hospital next to the ER, close proximity to AirMed, it did seem like a good option, not necessarily just for Castle Rock, but for our patients and for the community. So really at the end of the day, I hope we can work together to try to find solutions for, whether or not we can find a building. That's just something that can save the county money. If there's vacant county buildings that you think could work, that we could renovate, that would be something we'd be open to as well. It is something that we had discussed, but I think the timing with the previous commission and the handover was probably not opportune for us in taking over, because the location of an ambulance service in Rock Springs isn't ideal, but we're open to suggestions too. If you think that there's something that we could do that could save some money, we're all ears, but I just don't think that we as Castle Rock should be the only ones trying to find solutions. We would ask that we be partners with you in this, because both of us have, we have 4 years left. We each have a 1-year opportunity. If we feel like somebody else needs to operate the ambulance service, we could do that. Castle Rock doesn't feel like that would be the best solution, but if it's something that we are left, just by ourselves to try to operate it and to do everything, we're fine operating it, but we just don't want you to feel like we're financially not meeting your expectations either. So please, if there's any feedback that you have as far as how we could save and find a location that would benefit us both, we would be more than open to that as well. So.
I don't think that really has to do with the relationship though. I mean, we met with you, went over the potential facility at the hospital grounds. I think there's been some discussions about some of the other county facilities that are vacant that maybe weren't a good fit, I believe is what you expressed to me. And that's kind of some of the uncertainty with it, because what worked for medics and their facility where they were at isn't working for Castle Rock now. So I don't think that we're not willing to work together with you. I think we most certainly are. And the checkbook certainly states that. So, if there's a way we can assist, we'll do what we can, but ultimately, once again, it's your guys' operation, and part of our subsidy helps. So you rent a facility for your operation. So.
And I think the one facility that was suggested to us before was Night Oil Tools, that building that had some vacancy in it. But we did tour it, and there weren't any others that I'm aware of that could be good possibilities. So if you know of any that the county owns that, really what it would do is just decrease the amount of subsidy that we're asking for. But if there's not, we can certainly find something else as well. And I think, as far as Memorial Hospital goes, we can certainly go back to them with a proposal and talk more at the board level. I think at the time that was something that the CEO had wanted to discuss with the board in one of the meetings in the fall. But if that's something that's a good possibility, then we'd be more than happy to do that as well.
And I'll add that it's not that the Sweetwater Medics building isn't working, because it is, and we could stay there moving forward. It's just the cost. We're paying about $7,000 a month to rent it. And so to build a new building, that brand new building that we could use for 30 years, we believe we're going to be paying about half that in terms of rent, basically. And then there'll be maintenance on top of that. Yeah, of course, as the years go by, but over the long term, the county's better off financially if we're in a different building.
No, I stated that not necessarily because of the reason for the subsidy or the rent payment going up, but also you would mention that being in a residential location that wasn't ideal, and being at the hospital right next to it is more centrally localized for interstate access and what have you. So that was the point. Is there any other thoughts, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards?
just one last thought. As the chairman said, we get all of the negative. We hear all the negative. We don't often hear the positive, but just want to relay my experiences. I have a elderly family member who has availed herself of your services probably half a dozen times in the last couple of months. And I do want to commend you there. Your staff has been absolutely professional and provided great service in each and every case. So we all have empirical evidence. That's mine. We can fight over the numbers all we want to, but they've provided great service to my family. So thank you.
Any other discussion?
You plan to continue the quarterly reports to us?
Well, we appreciate you coming before us today. Thanks for hanging in there during our delay in the agenda there, but we'll continue to work at this, and we can have that discussion further on, facility if you'd like, and maybe that's, another agenda item that we can put all the costs together and analyze. I don't know how quick you're looking for a turnaround in that realm, but it sounds like some more information would help, allow us more time to make a decision on that. So if that's something you're willing, I think we're open to that, and go from there. But appreciate you guys coming over today.
Thank you. And I'll just add that just having this contract with the county, it has been huge for the stability of the community and having ambulance service available, but also for our staff, but especially for the staff of Sweetwater Medics, because we're not going to come to you and say, if you don't give us additional funds, we're shutting it down. We're done. We're never going to do that. We're in a contract. We're going to take the 1.8, even if we end up spending more than that, because we are financially stable at the medical center, and we can help subsidize that if we need to. But yeah, so thank you for this. I think it's made a big difference financially. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it. All right, we did fall behind almost an hour.
Walmsley wants to volunteer a facility.
So we do apologize for those that are still sticking with us, but we appreciate that. That does conclude the regular amount of business for the agenda. And next, we do have an executive session to discuss real estate and a pre-decisional item. So At this time, I'd entertain a motion to enter into an executive session.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Slaughter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. We're unsure if action will be taken until we come out. So at this time, I
Have
do
it.
not know.
Question in the back.
We already had public comment this morning at the beginning of the agenda. Yeah, sorry about that. If it wasn't under a time constraint, we would certainly allow, but it's been a busy day.
But feel free to contact any of us individually, though, to share information. Our cards are over there.
We do have a motion and a second to enter into an executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We're now in executive.